I still remember clearly the night everything began. A damp and dark night of March in Arlington, Virginia. I had just finished work, not even having taken off my tie yet, when my phone started vibrating non-stop. Missed calls from my mother, from my father, and finally from my sister, Emily. I had never seen her call repeatedly like that. My heart pounded with each vibration, as if warning me that something far more terrifying than my usual financial pressure was waiting ahead. When I picked up, my mother's voice trembled like a thin string about to snap. "Jack, the company has been sealed. They came in huge numbers. They have a search warrant." I heard her sobbing, and then my father trying to reassure her, but completely powerless. I threw on my coat and ran out of my apartment like a man fleeing from his own life. The road from Arlington to Fairfax was pitch black. The cold wind brushed against my face like it was warning me that nothing would ever be the same again. When I arrived, the scene before me left me standing frozen. Police cars crowded the entrance of Sullivan Industries. Yellow "Do Not Cross" tape stretched across the gate like a sentence delivered without trial. My father's employees were huddled together, frightened and unsettled. I saw my father surrounded by investigators, and my mother standing a few meters away, pale as if about to faint. Emily ran toward me. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes, but what frightened me more was the expression of fear on her face. "Jack, you're here." Her voice was tiny. I grabbed her shoulders, pressing her. "What happened? Who did this?" Emily avoided my eyes, something she rarely did in her whole life. At that moment, I knew something filthy and much bigger was in motion. An investigator held a stack of papers in front of me. "Sullivan Industries is accused of tax evasion, money laundering, and involvement in illegal financial activities." I laughed. A strange reaction, perhaps because I couldn't believe the absurdity of it. My family might be poor, might struggle, but we had never touched anything shady. My father, Richard Sullivan, was the kind of man who would rather lose money than break the law. While I was trying to stay calm, a detail made cold sweat run down my spine. The anonymous complaint came from the Congressional Financial Committee, and in the corner of the document, there was an ID code. I didn't need anyone to explain further. I had seen that code before in my brother-in-law's office. Representative Graham Whitford. As if someone slapped me, I turned to Emily. "Was it him?" Emily shook her head, but tears streamed down her face. "Jack, don't ask me that. I don't know." But she knew, and I knew she knew. In my head flashed countless memories of Graham. Polite family dinners, his fake noble smile, the way he held Emily's hand a little too tightly whenever she said something he didn't like. I always sensed he was the type who would never accept disobedience. But I never imagined he would destroy an entire family just to fulfill some political ambition. When an agent asked my father to get into the car to cooperate with the investigation, my mother burst into tears. I ran toward them, blocking the car door and shouting, "He didn't do anything! You have no right to take him like this!" An officer held me back, but my father simply placed a hand on my shoulder. "Jack, let them do their job. Don't make things worse." His voice was strangely calm, as if he understood that once power chose to destroy someone, innocence meant nothing. After they took my father away, Emily pulled me behind the parking lot where no one could hear us. She hugged me tightly, the most desperate embrace I had ever received. "Jack, he told me to stay silent. He said if I sided with the family, things would get much worse." I pulled her hands away and looked her straight in the eyes. "Emily, tell me the truth. Was it Graham?" She said nothing, just cried. Silence. The answer was clearer than any words. That night, as I stood alone in front of the sealed company building, fear, rage, and helplessness mixed together into a poison burning inside my chest. I knew that if I didn't act, my family would be crushed under Graham's power. But I also knew something else. To fight him, I had to step into the political arena, where he was strongest, where I had always avoided. The night wind blew hard, so strong it made me shiver. But in that coldness, my determination ignited. I looked at the flashing red lights on the police cars and told myself, If he thinks my family will kneel, I'll show him he chose the wrong target. That night was the moment I stepped onto a path with no return. The next day, when I still hadn't recovered from the shock of the previous night, a strange message appeared on my phone. I am Senator Howard Briggs. We need to meet, as soon as possible. I stared at the sender's name, unable to believe my eyes. Briggs was a veteran senator who had directly clashed with Graham on many major bills. Someone like him wouldn't contact me unless something extremely serious was happening. I replied with a short sentence. Where?
30 minutes later, I was standing in front of a small cafe near Capitol Hill.
Inside, Briggs sat in the farthest corner, his long coat draped over the chair, his neatly combed silver hair and sharp eyes looking as though they could see through any disguise. As soon as I sat down, he spoke immediately. No circling around, no pleasantries. I know who did that to your family. I clenched my fists. Was it Graham? Briggs nodded without hesitation. He's the kind of man who will burn anything that stands in his way. Your family is just one of them.
I felt the blood in my body heat up.
Why? My family has nothing to do with his game. Briggs pushed a brown folder toward me. Open it.
Inside were documents listing 3 other families who had been attacked just like us.
All were small or medium-sized businesses that had refused to contribute to Graham's campaign or had questioned his policy proposals. Briggs continued. Graham uses your family as an example, a lesson, to show others who really holds power. My throat tightened, full of anger, fear, and the realization that I no longer had any choice but to confront him.
Briggs took a sip of coffee,
Then looked at me for a long time. Do you want to save your family? I nodded. At all costs. Briggs placed his hands on the table, interlocking his fingers. Then you must step into politics. You must confront him directly. You cannot take down someone like Graham by staying outside his game. I frowned. Politics? I was a financial analyst, not a politician. I hated the filth, manipulation, the battles that Graham excelled at. And now the senator who opposed him wanted me to jump into that?
As if reading my hesitation,
Briggs added, I know you're smart, but intelligence won't save your family. You need power, and power requires a voice. I looked out the cafe window. The streets of Washington were still busy, as if nothing had happened. But inside me was a violent turbulence. And if I say no? Briggs answered instantly, then prepare to watch your family fall apart. He threw that sentence at me like a knife straight into my chest. I called Evan, my closest friend, the one who always appeared when I was most confused. Evan, I need to see you. Urgent. Evan rushed over within 12 minutes, carrying his laptop, 3 cups of coffee, and a face that was both worried and curious. After hearing everything, he exhaled long. Jack, I know you hate politics, but you can't just sit and watch. If Briggs wants to help, then that's an opportunity. I crossed my arms, leaning back in the chair. I'm afraid I'll get crushed. Evan shrugged. You're already being crushed, aren't you? After a few minutes of silence, Evan opened his laptop and showed me hundreds of articles spreading about my family. If you don't speak up, Graham will write your story for you. I looked at the screen and saw clearly that public opinion was being manipulated. Sullivan Industries was being called a corruption hub, and my father was being paraded as a criminal. Briggs' words grew more accurate by the second. Truth saves no one if the one in power refuses to let it appear. Briggs returned to the table after taking a call. I'm not asking you to become a politician immediately. I'm asking you to stand up. Begin. Let people know you won't stay silent, I asked. And what do you gain from helping me? Briggs smiled slightly, not hiding anything. I want to take Graham down. I need someone motivated enough to fight to the end, and you're the only person he doesn't expect. Before leaving, Briggs placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low but heavy. You have until the end of the week. If you decide to enter the game, I'll open the first door for you. Watching him leave the cafe, I felt like I had just received a verdict from fate. That evening I drove to Capitol Hill, where Congress stood tall in the night. Its white stone columns looked like gates to a foreign world I had never wanted to approach. I stood looking at that giant building and understood that Briggs was right. If I didn't step inside, I would lose before even fighting. The night wind blew through, carrying the cold, metallic scent of steel and power. I placed my hand on the railing, looked once more at the glowing lights inside those political offices a few 100 meters away, and I whispered, uncertain whether I was speaking to myself or to Graham. If you want war, I'll answer it. That was the moment I made my decision. From an outsider, I stepped into the game he thought only he controlled. I didn't think I would return to New York so soon, but 2 days after my meeting with Briggs, I was already in Manhattan, standing among the rushing crowds as if the world didn't care about the storm crushing my family. Evan walked beside me, clutching his laptop like it was the only weapon we had in this war. He told me, if we want to counterattack, we have to start with the media. Your story needs to be heard. I knew Evan was right, but my heart was filled with doubt. National media was not a place an ordinary person like me could just enter. There, the truth wasn't what mattered most. The important thing was who had the power to control it. Manhattan was especially cold that day, the wind rushing between skyscrapers strong enough to make me pause. Evan led me to the headquarters of a major media company. But I wasn't there for an interview or to request airtime. I was there because of one person. Ava Mitchell, a famous investigative journalist known for her sharpness, someone who had exposed many major scandals. Evan said she was the only one who could help us balance the information war that was already leaning entirely toward Graham. As we walked into the lobby, I saw Ava from a distance. She stood leaning against the wall, holding a cup of coffee, her brown hair falling lightly to one side, her eyes sharp and calm, as if reading the thoughts of everyone in the room. Before I could get closer, she had already noticed me. No smile, no greeting, just a direct question. You're Jack Sullivan? I nodded. I heard you wanted to meet me, Ava replied. I didn't want to meet you. My network wants the story on your family. If you don't want your narrative twisted, you should talk. I clenched my fist. I didn't come here to beg for sympathy or protection. I just want the truth to be told. Ava shrugged. Good. But you must understand, journalism is not a place where people simply say the truth. Here, the truth needs evidence. I looked at Evan, then back at Ava. Then I'll give you evidence. We went up to the 17th floor, into a small meeting room. Evan opened his laptop and showed her the documents we had gathered from Briggs and the leaked internal sources. Ava scanned each page, each image, each note without showing emotion. But when Evan opened a metadata file related to the anonymous complaint, Ava's eyes darkened. This code, she said softly. I've seen it in many political manipulation cases. I asked immediately, whose is it? Ava didn't answer directly, but looked at me with an expression that confirmed everything. I understood. She knew it was connected to Graham. Ava stood up, walked a few circles around the room, then looked directly at me. I'll be straightforward. I can investigate this, but you're fighting someone backed by an entire machine. Graham has people in the media, in Congress, and even within law enforcement. If you enter this fight, you will have no way back. I replied without hesitation. I already have no way back. Evan added, Ava, if you help us, we'll have even more information. Briggs is sending more data. The first expose will be enough to spread. Ava looked at Evan, then at me. I'm not helping you. I'm helping this story. Because if what I see is true, America needs to know. I nodded. That was what I wanted. Not pity, not sympathy, but someone who could bring the truth into the light. The conversation ended, but before leaving the room, Ava unexpectedly stopped me. One warning, she spoke slowly. I received an internal email this morning. Graham's office has issued directives to news agencies. Closely monitor your family's story and prioritize publishing negative angles. I frowned. What do you mean? Ava replied, You're being watched, not physically, but every media-related step you take is within his control. I felt a weight crush my chest, but Ava wasn't done. And one more thing, They want the first article about you to be negative. If you do nothing, they will kill your reputation within the next 24 hours.
Evan immediately opened his laptop, checking social networks.
Jack, they've started. He showed me the screen. Dozens of posts using hashtags of my name with the phrase, financial corruption. I saw pictures of my father edited with mocking captions. I saw our family company labeled as a money laundering hub. All released systematically.
Ava looked at me, her eyes for the first time no longer cold but carrying a real warning.
If you want to regain balance, you need to speak up. Today.
I stood up. Then we start today.
Ava nodded lightly. Good. I'll prepare the questions. You have 3 hours to be ready. This will be your first interview, and your first strike against Graham using your own voice.
As I walked out of the building, the Manhattan wind was still as cold as when I arrived.
But inside me, something had changed. I was no longer a man running from the storm. I was preparing to step into its center.
The 3 hours of preparation for the interview passed faster than I expected.
I had never spoken in front of a camera with the mindset of someone confronting one of the most powerful congressmen in the country. I never imagined there would come a day when I had to speak about my family's truth before millions of people. But when the clock struck the appointed time, I knew there was no turning back. Evan adjusted the microphone for me, while Ava stood across from me, holding a sheet of questions. She looked at me as if she were evaluating whether I was truly strong enough to continue.
"Are you ready?" Ava asked. I took a deep breath. Even if I'm not, I have to do it. The interview was streamed live on the network's largest online platform, where hundreds of thousands of viewers tuned in on average. When the lights came on, Ava began with a calm but weighty tone.
Today we are here with Jack Sullivan, who is at the center of a controversial scandal involving his family's company. Jack, tell us, what is happening?
I knew this moment would define everything.
If I appeared weak, Graham would crush me instantly. If I was overly emotional, the public would think I was acting. So I chose honesty. My family was set up by a force powerful enough to fabricate an entire false accusation.
Ava leaned toward me.
You're referring to Congressman Graham Whitford?
That question cut through the air like a blade.
Evan stood behind the camera and subtly signaled to me, "Don't break." I looked directly at the lens. Yes, him.
Social media exploded instantly.
I heard Ava's phone vibrating non-stop, notifications firing like fireworks from the newsroom. But she stayed calm and continued questioning. Do you have evidence?
Evan passed me the tablet.
I opened the metadata document Ava had seen the day before. This is an internal code belonging to one of the congressman's aides. It matches the anonymous complaint that led to my family's company being shut down.
Ava stared at the screen for a long moment before facing me again.
If what you're saying is true, this is an extremely serious allegation, I responded. I don't want to turn this into a personal feud, but my family cannot be slandered just because someone wants to perform a show of power.
The interview lasted over 30 minutes.
I talked about my father, a man who lived his entire life honestly. About my mother, who was so terrified she didn't dare leave the house. About Emily, my sister, who was both a victim and trapped between two men she loved and feared at the same time. Ava didn't skip any detail. She asked about motives, about documents, about why I believed Graham could do something like this. I answered everything, knowing each sentence could be used against me.
When the interview ended, Ava turned off her microphone and looked at me for a long time.
You've just thrown yourself into the center of the storm, I exhaled. I know.
We left the studio, and as soon as the elevator opened,
Evan received a message from Briggs. Good, but get ready. He will attack. Before I could respond, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds and answered.
The voice on the other end whispered slowly, clearly, and menacingly.
Stop, Jack. You have no idea what you're up against.
I froze in the hallway.
Who is this? But the call ended.
Evan approached. Who was it?
I stared at the blank screen. Someone from his side.
We left the building, but the feeling of being watched grew heavier.
I wasn't the type to succumb to paranoia easily, but as we crossed the street, I saw a black SUV parked at the corner. Tinted windows, no plates. Evan saw it too and whispered, "You see that?" I nodded. "Yeah, I see it." That night when we returned to the hotel, an envelope lay on the floor in front of my door. No sender address. Inside was a silver USB and a handwritten note. "If you want to save your family, watch this." Evan wanted to call Briggs, but I stopped him. "No, we watch it now." We closed the curtains, locked the door, and opened the USB on Evan's laptop. Inside was an audio file. The voice was so clear it sent chills down my spine. "Find a small company, create an accusation, force them to cooperate or collapse, leave no trace. If needed, replace the evidence." I knew that voice. I would recognize it anywhere. Graham Whitford. Evan cursed. "Oh my God, this is..." I couldn't speak. My hands were cold. I had thought I was mentally prepared for anything, but hearing his voice ordering the destruction of my family as casually as asking for a cup of coffee made me realize this was no longer political games. This was war. Evan said, "Jack, this is enough to trigger a major investigation." I shook my head. "Not yet. He'll claim it's edited. If we want to take him down, we need more." Evan sank into the chair, running his hands through his hair. "So what's next?" I looked at the USB, my voice deep. "We find the person in that room today, the one who recorded this, and we protect them at all costs." That night, I lay in a dark room, listening to the traffic outside Manhattan. But my mind held only one thought. Graham has gone too far. And if I didn't stop him, more families would be crushed. I knew clearly. From this point on, my path had no escape, and for that very reason, I couldn't afford to lose. The next morning, I woke up feeling as if my entire body had been crushed through a massive steel machine. I hadn't slept at all. Graham's recording replayed in my mind over and over, each word dragging down my spine like a dull blade. Evan had fallen asleep on the hotel chair, the laptop still open, its cold blue screen shining on his tired face. I stood by the window, looking down at Manhattan waking up, and I knew today would be the day Graham counterattacked. I didn't have to wait long. Around 10 a.m., a message from Briggs appeared. "Whitford is preparing for a press conference. Brace yourself." My stomach dropped. I turned on the TV. Minutes later, Graham's face appeared, polished, composed, looking every bit like a model statesman standing before a podium with the congressional seal behind him. "It is truly unfortunate," he said, using that familiar, hypocritical, calm voice, "that someone in distress would fabricate baseless accusations in an attempt to tarnish my reputation and my office." He paused, looking directly into the camera with sharp eyes. "To the public, do not let yourselves be manipulated by the desperation of a collapsing family." Evan woke up at that moment. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. Graham continued, "I have always supported transparency. My office will cooperate fully with any investigation. However, I will pursue legal action against anyone spreading defamatory information." He was threatening me. On national television. I clenched my fists so hard I heard my knuckles crack. "He wants to paint me as a liar," I said quietly. Evan nodded. "He attacks first to take the advantage. Classic move." Before I could calm myself, my phone vibrated non-stop. Emails, texts, dozens of notifications. Then Ava called. "I need to see you now," she said. No greeting, no explanation. "I'm downstairs." I rushed down. Ava was waiting, holding a thick file. Just from her expression, I knew it wasn't good. "Graham has started releasing your personal information," Ava said. "He's using secondary news outlets to publish stories about your time working in Boston, your late tax filings, even your breakup with your ex." I scoffed. "All legal. But how will he twist it?" Ava replied. "He'll turn you into someone unstable, irresponsible, untrustworthy. And if the public believes that, you won't get another chance to speak." I exhaled sharply. Then we counterattack. Ava opened the file, showing media analysis reports. "I contacted some people inside Congress. Rumor says Graham is hiding certain illegal financial contributions. If we find those funds, We can flip everything.
Evan stepped forward. What do you need me to do?
Ava said, I need you to trace 3 nonprofit organizations that funded Graham's campaign 4 years ago. There are signs they're shells.
Evan immediately opened his laptop.
Give me 10 minutes. While Evan worked, Ava pulled me aside. Jack, I have to say this. From this point on, he won't only attack your reputation, he will attack the people around you. She looked into my eyes, serious. Are you prepared?
I didn't answer for a long moment.
Then I finally said, I have no choice. Evan suddenly shouted from across the lobby. I got it! We ran over. On his screen was a list of suspicious transactions. Evan spun the laptop toward us. Here, 3 nonprofits receiving hundreds of thousands but showing no real activity, all sending money to the same small fund in Delaware. And the fund owner is— Ava read the name before Evan finished. Caleb Morton. I froze. Caleb Morton, Graham's communications director, the man behind all media manipulation. Ava leaned back in her chair. Jack, if we prove Caleb is receiving dirty money to manipulate the media, Graham will be pulled into collusion. This is the link we need. I asked immediately, what's next? Ava replied without hesitation. We need the original documents, not copies. We need undeniable proof of the money trail. Evan cut in. I can hack into the system, but the risk is insane. If I get caught— I interrupted him. If we don't do this, my family gets destroyed. Ava looked at me seriously. Jack, this is completely different from doing interviews or releasing statements. This is touching a federal financial scandal. If you get involved, you're entering a war where the only outcomes are victory or annihilation. I looked at Ava, at Evan, then at the blinking laptop screen. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, both paths shrouded in darkness. But in that darkness, I saw my father in an interrogation room, my mother trembling, Emily crying. I clenched my fist. We go in. Ava nodded. Good. Tonight, I'll arrange a meeting with an anonymous source in the federal finance office. They can access the files we need. She paused. But you must come with me. Around 9 p.m., we arrived at an underground parking garage in Brooklyn. The cold wind swept through the concrete columns, footsteps echoing like we were walking inside an abandoned ship hull. A man in a baseball cap emerged from the shadows, holding a document bag. Your Briggs people? He whispered. Ava nodded. Yes. Do you have what we need? The man handed her the bag, but his hands trembled. I can't hold on to this any longer. If they find out I took it out, I'll— He didn't finish. I opened the bag. Inside were original financial statements, stamped by the U.S. Treasury. Evan whispered, Holy shit, this is a kill shot. But before we could leave, the man added a sentence that made my skin crawl. You should know, Graham isn't just defending. He's preparing an attack. And this time, he looked directly at me. He's aiming at you. I gripped the documents. I had known Graham wouldn't sit still. But hearing it from someone inside the system made me understand one truth more clearly than ever. This battle had grown far beyond my family. It had become a personal confrontation between me and a political monster willing to do anything to survive. And from that moment, I no longer felt fear. There was only one thing left: to bring him down, at any cost. News about Graham's press conference spread like a virus within hours. He didn't just attack me on television. He activated his entire media apparatus to erase my image. That same afternoon, dozens of sensational headlines appeared. Did Jack Sullivan fabricate everything to escape trouble? The Sullivan family, a long history of financial mismanagement. Is Jack using the media for political motives? Evan read each article, his face turning red in anger. They're trying to make you look delusional. Give it a few more days and your reputation will crash completely. I knew he was right. Graham wasn't just defending, he was attacking at the speed of light. That evening, Ava called us to the temporary office she had rented for the investigation. It was a small room on the top floor of an old building in Manhattan. Simple interior, but with a huge window overlooking the endless streaks of cars below. On the table was a large whiteboard full of timelines, names, money trails, and connection diagrams linking all the organizations related to Graham. Ava stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, looking more serious than ever. The problem now isn't just protecting you, Jack. It's shifting the entire game. If we let him control the narrative longer, we'll be crushed. I sank into a chair, feeling my whole body weighed down by anxiety. What's the plan?
Ava pointed to a section of the timeline.
Tomorrow, Graham will appear on the biggest political show in the country. He'll use it to declare his innocence. And if we don't have something strong enough, he'll succeed. Evan interjected. But we just got the original financial documents. Isn't that enough?
Ava shook her head.
Not yet. A bank statement, even a real one, can still be spun into a weak theory. We need another strike, something undeniable. I frowned. What do you mean? Ava said, a witness, someone who directly worked on those transactions or knows how Caleb Morton moved the money.
Evan sighed.
Finding a witness in a machine like this is harder than finding a needle in a haystack. Ava shrugged. Then we flipped the entire haystack.
While Ava and Evan analyzed further,
I turned on the TV to check the news. On the screen were commentators mocking me, scoffing at my interview. One said, if he had real evidence, why didn't he show all of it? Clearly an act. Another added, a nobody like Jack Sullivan doesn't stand a chance against a talented congressman like Whitford.
I gripped the remote.
Not because of the insults, but because I saw Graham's strategy clearly. Destroy my credibility, make every word I say sound ridiculous, then erase my ability to fight back.
Ava turned off the TV.
Don't look, his goal is to shake you. She handed me another file. And this may save us. I opened it. Inside was a list of employees who had worked under Caleb. 7 names. 2 had quit. 3 moved to other firms. 2 had vanished from public records over the past 2 years.
Who among them do you think will talk?
I asked. Ava replied, one of them once contacted a journalist about legal advice. If we find him, we have a chance.
Evan opened his laptop.
Name? Ava said, Harold Kent. Evan checked. Harold Kent, former accountant managing secondary funds for Graham's campaign, suddenly quit. I asked, why did he quit? Evan said, no explanation. And that's the issue.
While Evan searched for Harold's address, Ava sat beside me.
Jack, I have to say this. When we release everything, not only Graham falls. You will be torn apart by the media too. They will dig up every tiny mistake in your life. Are you sure you can handle that?
I looked at the city lights reflected in Ava's eyes.
I'm not doing this to be liked. I'm doing it for my family. Ava looked at me a few seconds, then nodded.
Suddenly, Evan shouted,
Got it! Found his old address in Queens, but... He hesitated. He seems to be under surveillance. I frowned. Surveillance? Evan zoomed in on a blurry satellite shot. Civilian cameras show 2 men standing outside his building almost every day.
Ava stood up.
If we go to Harold now, we'll likely get intercepted. I asked. Then what do we do? Ava replied, we stay ahead.
The plan was made instantly.
Evan would contact Harold through an encrypted channel and set up a secret meeting. Ava and I would go early to ensure no one followed. We would meet Harold at an abandoned warehouse near the Brooklyn waterfront. No cameras, no signal, no foot traffic. If Harold cooperated, we'd get what Graham couldn't erase. Direct testimony from someone who handled the money.
Around 1 a.m., Evan received a reply.
Harold agreed. But he added a sentence that left all 3 of us silent.
If I talk, I'll die. I messaged back.
I'll protect you. We'll protect each other. Harold replied, I hope you're right. When I turned off the phone, my whole body trembled. Not from fear, but because I finally understood that this war had gone far beyond interviews, news articles, or dirty political tricks.
This was a war that could get people killed, and I was already in.
There was no turning back. I always thought I could handle pressure well, but only when I sat in the rental car driving through the dark streets of Brooklyn at 3 a.m. did I realize my body was trembling. Ava sat in the back seat, eyes fixed on the tablet screen that monitored the tracking device Evan had set up to see if anyone was following us. Evan sat beside me, his hands clenched together, probably trying to hide that he was just as nervous as I was.
No one spoke.
Even our breathing felt too loud inside the cramped car. We were on our way to meet Harold Kent, the man who could change everything in this war, or drag us all under if we made even one mistake. When the car turned into the abandoned warehouse district by the river, the air felt so heavy it was suffocating. Several streetlights were broken, plunging the area into darkness, with only the moonlight reflecting faintly off the black water in the distance. Ava whispered, "No tracking signals. But be careful. They might not be using devices." We turned off the headlights and stepped out quietly. Every footstep echoed across the vast, empty space. Evan unlocked the warehouse door using an old key the property manager had given Ava earlier. Inside was pitch black, but when I turned on the flashlight, I saw an old table, some rotten crates, and dust everywhere. Then a weak voice came from the corner. "Mr. Sullivan?" We spun around immediately. Harold Kent stood there, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, his hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes. He wore a thin jacket, arms wrapped tightly around himself as if shielding against the world. When the flashlight hit him, he squinted and stepped back. Ava raised her hands to show we had no weapons. "Harold, we're friends of Briggs. We're here to listen." Harold stared at me for a long moment, then asked, "Are you sure you want the truth? Once I say it, there's no going back." I stepped forward. "I haven't had a way back for a long time." Harold looked around nervously before sitting on a wooden crate and beginning to speak. "I worked for Caleb Morton for 3 years. I thought I was just doing normal accounting. But over time, I realized the campaign's sub-funds were taking money from illegal sources. The money was routed through non-profit organizations, cleaned, then cycled back into Caleb's media fund." He shivered, wrapping his arms around his head. "I confronted Caleb. He told me, 'Don't ask if you want to live.'" Ava glanced at me. I could see something in her eyes she rarely allowed to show. Real fear. Harold continued, "I tried to quit, but then 2 men showed up at my house. They told me I wasn't allowed to reveal anything. A month later, a colleague from my department. They said he died in a car accident, but I know he never drove at night." He paused, breathing heavily. I understood they were sending me a message. I sat beside Harold. "Do you have any proof?" Harold reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB, smaller than the one we received earlier. "This is a recording I accidentally saved during a closed meeting. Caleb spoke with 2 donors. He admitted the funds were illegal and had been taken care of." Ava jumped up. "My God, Harold, this is direct evidence." Harold shook his head. "Not just that. In the recording, there's a part where Caleb mentions Graham. He said, 'He knows everything. He just needs to play his role.'" A cold wave shot down my spine, not because I was surprised anymore, but because the final puzzle piece had snapped perfectly into place. Graham wasn't just complicit. He was the mastermind. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the warehouse door. Ava immediately switched off the flashlight. Evan pulled Harold down. My heart felt like it was going to explode. Footsteps. Clear, slow, heavy. Ava whispered, "Someone's here." I held my breath. In the darkness, I heard metal clicking, like someone loading a gun. Harold trembled violently. "They found me." I grabbed his shoulder. "No, we're getting out." Ava signaled for us to move toward the back door. Evan led the way, using dim phone light to find the path. But as we approached the exit, the footsteps shifted direction. They were coming toward us. Ava whispered sharply, "Go, now." We ran across the wooden crates, keeping the light off. When we reached the back door, Evan managed to unlock it. We burst outside, gasping for air. Behind us, someone shouted, "Over here!" I pulled Harold and ran toward the car. Ava pointed toward an alley. "This way!" We sprinted into it, swallowed by darkness. Behind us, the footsteps accelerated. When we reached a main street, Ava yelled, "Split up!" I grabbed Harold and dragged him toward the opposite direction. Evan and Ava ran the other way to draw attention. At the corner, I glanced back and saw 2 figures chasing after them. I exhaled sharply. "Thank God," Harold whispered. "I don't want to die, Jack." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You won't. I promise. We slipped into an old apartment building, hiding in the stairwell. I heard car engines rushing past outside and distant shouting. After a few minutes, everything went silent.
Harold collapsed onto the stairs, shaking.
Did I do the right thing? I held the USB tightly in my hand. You did the rightest thing you've ever done. In that moment, I realized we had crossed a line from which we could never return. With Harold's evidence, Graham wouldn't just be shaken. He could fall completely. But I also knew he would never let that happen easily. We had touched his deepest wound. And from that moment on, I felt one thing clearly. The real war had only just begun. I sat on that dark staircase for nearly 10 minutes before my breathing finally steadied. Harold's face was pale, as if he had just stared death in the eyes. Evan texted that he and Ava had escaped, but not to return to the hotel because Graham would surely have his men stationed there. I looked at the USB in my hand the way someone might look at a ticking bomb. Each second was a step closer to the final confrontation none of us could walk away from. I decided we had to leave the building immediately. Harold and I slipped through the narrow alleys of Brooklyn, avoiding main streets. Every time we heard a car engine echo between the buildings, we froze and waited for it to pass. Fear, tension, adrenaline, it all blurred together until I felt like I was floating outside of my own body. We met Ava and Evan again at a 24-hour diner, the kind where no one cares who you are or why you're there. Ava jumped to her feet the moment she saw us, her eyes still filled with tension. Jack, Harold. God, you're okay? Harold collapsed into a seat, speaking in a trembling whisper. They know I talked to you. I can't go home. I can't. Ava placed a hand on his shoulder. From now on, you'll be protected. I've already contacted someone from the Witness Protection Program. Your job is to stay alive long enough to testify. Harold nodded weakly, though fear still clouded his eyes. Evan opened his laptop and plugged in the USB. Ava looked at me. We need to confirm the content immediately. If it's what Harold said it is, this is the biggest weapon we have. Evan played the recording. Caleb Morton's voice filled the small diner, calm, arrogant, and cold. The money's handled. I pushed it through 3 nonprofits and into the media fund. No one can trace it. Graham knows everything. He wants silence, and that's what we're giving him. There was laughter. Then Caleb continued, Sullivan is just a pawn. If they cooperate, they live. If not, that's on them. I clenched my fist until my nails dug painfully into my skin. My chest felt like it was being crushed. Graham hadn't just wanted to destroy our company. He wanted to break us. He wanted to force us to kneel. Ava whispered, If this recording is authenticated, it proves Graham knew and approved the laundering. This is a federal crime. Evan nodded. We send this to the FBI, and they'll open a special investigation immediately. I stood up. No, we send nothing yet. Ava stared at me like I had lost my mind. Jack, what are you planning? I looked at all 3 of them. If we send it now, Graham will launch a counterattack claiming it's edited. He'll muddy the water. We need to move faster than he can react. Evan understood first. You want to go public, I nodded. Not just public. I'll speak personally. In front of the media. In front of everyone. Ava exhaled sharply. Jack, if you do that, you put yourself directly in the line of fire. He will destroy you. Your life will never be the same, I replied quietly but firmly. My life stopped being the same the moment he attacked my family. Evan looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. If you want to fight, we're with you. Ava finally nodded. Then we'll release everything. But we must choose the right place and the right moment. We decided to hold an independent press conference the next morning at a small Manhattan conference center. Ava contacted trustworthy journalists, those who weren't for sale. Evan handled the technical setup. I spent the entire night writing the speech that would define the rest of my life. At sunrise, I stood backstage, gripping my speech, my heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I heard the crowd gathering, cameras turning on, reporters murmuring. Ava stepped beside me and placed her hand on my shoulder. Jack, whatever happens after today, you've fought with everything you have. Don't forget that. I nodded and stepped onto the stage. The flashing lights exploded instantly. Dozens of cameras pointed at me. I placed my hands on the podium, took a deep breath, and began. My name is Jack Sullivan. My family has been destroyed by a filthy political scheme. Today, I stand here to reveal the truth they don't want you to know. I lifted the USB for everyone to see. This is a recording between Caleb Morton and 2 donors, confirming that illegal money was used for Congressman Graham Whitford's campaign. The room erupted in noise. I continued. In this recording, Caleb clearly states, Graham knows everything. Meaning, Congressman Whitford did not just know about the laundering, he approved it. I pressed play. Caleb's voice echoed through the hall like a verdict. When it ended, I delivered the final line. I am not doing this for power. I am doing this for my family, for the truth. And because America cannot allow someone like Graham to remain in Congress for even one more day. Chaos exploded. Reporters jumped up, calling editors. Networks switched to breaking news. Social media caught fire within seconds. I knew I had just ignited the biggest political storm of the year. But in the chaos, I saw one figure at the back of the hall. A cold stare, a faint smirk. I knew who it was. Graham. He looked at me like a cornered animal, but still dangerous. He nodded slightly, as if saying, the game isn't over. And I knew it too. The battle had only entered its most dangerous phase, but at least, this time, I wasn't fighting alone.